Good evening, Vancouver, and welcome back to Canucks After Dark 2023, January 2nd, after a rough couple of games for the Canucks, but one good win in there as well, and a lot of drama surrounding one of the Canucks star players, which we will get to, but as always, joined by my co-host, Canuck Clay. How are you doing today, Clay?
Parker, I'm great. Happy New Year, first and foremost, to you and to everyone watching. And yeah, we have a lot of stuff to talk about. Never a dull moment with this team. You can see I got a new microphone. I try to emulate you as much as I can. And I figured my $50 Amazon mic got me only so far. So is it looking okay? Sounding okay? Parker, are we all right?
Yep, we're matching. Okay. We just got the little contrast going. I got the black, you got the white. Looks good. So yeah,
all about harmony here. Yes,
it's a new year. You know, we're starting it off right. And folks, we're happy that you are here with us in our normal Monday time slot, which will not be the case next week, but it will still be Monday. But we'll get to that at the end of the show.
Lucas coming out strong.
I didn't see anything yet. What happened? $5. Thank you very much, Lucas, saying Happy New Year, Canucks After Dark and chat. May 2023 be a dang good one for you both and the podcast. Thank you very much, Lucas. Hopefully that will be the case.
Awesome.
Who knows? We might have a lot of pain ahead of us still, but hopefully we'll make the best of it. So we got a lot to talk about. Kind of. Wow. We've got 3 Canucks games. We've got a lot to talk about JT Miller. We've got Alexis Lafreniere being in the news. Obviously, Bo Horvat's sort of in the news because of that as well. We've got the World Juniors, where Canada barely got away from Slovakia tonight in a fantastic hockey game that has them playing in the semifinals on Wednesday. And we'll probably run into other things to talk about too. So it should be a good one.
What time's that game on Wednesday?
I think it's the same. I think it's another 3:30. 3:30 start on Wednesday.
Oh yeah, because it's the 4 hours ahead of us, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So it should be the 3:30 p.m. time slot, which will be great.
Yeah, if you work early.
Well, you know,
or from home.
Guess. Yeah, that'll be the play. Just have it on the TV.
It must be nice.
you can have it on the phone. You'll be fine.
Okay,
make it work. Fine. PVR it. You know, it's 2023. We can find ways to watch sports when we need to.
We will make.
Where do you want to start? Where do you want to start today? Back to the 3 games as we normally do.
Yeah, I guess we can go chronologically how the Canucks wound up the year, and then then we can talk about the off ice stuff. Some of it's on ice, some of off ice, and then if we wind up with the World Juniors, I think that would fill our hour quite nicely. I think.
Excellent. So we'll go back to Tuesday then. 6 days ago, feels like weeks ago at this point already, where the Canucks dominated the San Jose Sharks at home, 6-2. You have Horvat with 2 goals. You have Pettersson doing things. What do you remember from this hockey game?
Well, what I do remember is I was actually at this game with my family, which was nice. And this is a game where, I don't know, can we play San Jose 82 times, Parker? Well, that's only if you don't want Bedard. We have not lost to them. The other 2 games were a little closer. You might remember they were both overtime. And they're quite exciting, actually, back and forth. This one, really not much in doubt. And yes, you're right. Our big guys came out to play once again. And this was Horvat having yet another 4-point night. One game after he went Petey with 5, then Horvat with 4, then Horvat with another 4. So the big guns, as you said, came out to play. In Besser had 3 as well. Horvat 4, Mikheyev 4. So it was a good night for that line for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have Spencer Martin had a great night as well. But yeah, I think this is just Bo Horvat again, 25th and 26 goals of the year. And this was game 34, I think, which put him like well ahead of the 50 goal pace. And yeah, I don't have much to say about this game because it was such a smooth victory that I kind of blocked it out. I don't really remember it. Although the Jersey matchup was great, as Lucas mentions. Reverse Rivers for the last time versus San Jose at home until the NHL does it again in 2 years' time. Well, they did it last year, didn't they? So they'll probably do it every year, at least while they're with Adidas, which I think is only 1 more year.
Right.
But yeah, it was a great Jersey matchup with the Golden Seals. But yeah, kind of just a walk in the park game.
It was. And the Sharks, they don't have Thornton, they don't have Pavelski, they're off Marlowe. They're a lot younger now, and they still have some good players. Parker, like Timo Meyer's still good. He had his 19th and 20th of the year. Kucher's still good. He's probably like the veteran with Carlson now. They still have a Hurdle. They still have what's his face, the guy who signed. I can't remember his name now, but they don't have, I guess, as much. And Reimer had a really rough night in net.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a team that we should rightfully beat, and they are below us in the standings, and we don't worry about a team like this generally.
Yeah, the Sharks are weird because they don't really have an upward trajectory, right? They have all these old guys on big contracts, and then suddenly you have Erik Karlsson having a complete resurgence of a season, right? Like last year he only had 35 points. He has 53 this season already.
Yeah.
Like it's things like that make this team a little bit interesting, although they're still losing most of the time. You know, they don't have good goaltending. They're, like I said, they're getting old. They've got a bunch of money committed to guys like Logan Couture, Vlasic, Carlson, and it's just, you know, they're a team that the Canucks should just walk all over, especially with our expectations of the team coming into the year.
Sure.
But nothing's very sure nowadays.
Right. Oh, look, Kevin LeBlanc was the name I was looking for. So, two other things I want to say about this game really quick. Lucas, thank you, Lucas. You're starting out this year off with a bang. Another $5 donation. Cannot confirm nor deny what's going on with the jerseys. LMAO. I think we may see something happen soon. If you're talking about the flying skate, we'll get to that, but the Canucks did wear flying skate gear at practice today. Thank you again, Lucas. So, Parker, I'm looking at the stats here. Let's equate Karlsson to Hughes just for argument's sake.
Right.
Then would you rather have this fivesome behind Erik Karlsson? Vlasic, who's maybe their Myers, and then Ferraro, Magna, Benning, and Harrington. I don't know any of those guys. Are they good?
Yeah. No. No, not really. You know, Vlasic is fine. He's not the player he once was, obviously.
Right.
He used to be a top defenseman in the league. But yeah, when you're talking about Magna and not the one that played for the Canucks, not that would be much of a difference. But you know, you're talking about a bunch of guys who have like namesakes, right? Matt Benning.
Yep.
You know, you think of Jim Benning, you had Jacob Magna. When you think of Jason Magna, you have Mario Ferraro. When you think of Landon Ferraro or Ray Ferraro, it's
great point.
You think of Pickles.
It's the all name team. Yes,
it is the all name team for sure.
I will say one other thing. I'm not sure if you watched it or saw the highlights. Poor Matt Benning, speaking of him, he got smoked by a shot by Garland, I think. Poor guy.
Oh, yeah. He was injured, and the Canucks just eventually scored, right?
Yeah, and San Jose never got control of the puck, so the ref couldn't, I guess, properly blow it down. And he tried to get to the bench, then he hobbled back, and by the end of the play, he just kind of lied down, which I would do too.
Yeah, that's tough.
It was rough.
So that got the Canucks above 500 for the first time this season.
Yes.
And it lasted till the next game, which was Thursday. 2 days later, Canucks go on the road to Winnipeg, a barn that they have never had any luck in, against a team that they've never had any luck against for the most part. And they just got, they got nothing done. I mean, you look at the goals, 4-2. You look at the shots, 39-22. And it's 39-22 from a team that was down by 2 going into the third. So usually you expect like score effects, right? You're going to usually the team behind has a good third period because the other team's playing passively. Nope, didn't matter. Yeah. Winnipeg has 20 shots in the second period, 13 shots in the third. Canucks only muster 22. Nice Kuzmenko goal early though. That was nice.
Nice steal from PD. Still not sure what that Winnipeg defenseman was doing, but PD, it was nice. He actually looked off. I guess Lane Peterson was also there in front of the net, and then went to the back guy, Kuzmenko, and Kuzmenko's such a good shot. That was a great way to start the game. And Parker, I will say, it looks like the Canucks, obviously they scored very early, and then you could say, well, then probably did Winnipeg dominate the next 39 minutes? Actually, I thought the Canucks came out strong, and I was quite impressed with the way they took it to the Jets, at least for the first 10 minutes or so.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Their first 8 to 10 minutes was great, right? You have that Pedersen play that sets up the goal. You have them out shooting the Jets 9-6, which is crazy because that means the Jets had 33 shots in the last 40 minutes.
Yep.
But yeah, the Canucks played a great 10 minutes and then they didn't show up for the rest of the game. And this is also the game where the end is a complete catastrophe. right? You have the Canucks getting within one after doing nothing for 40 minutes, about halfway through the third. You have a Garland goal that he sort of banked in. It was a
Banks
weird
in.
goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, yeah, the Canucks do absolutely nothing after that. They show almost no heart. And then they eventually do try to pull the goalie, and that's a disaster. And they skate in circles for 30 seconds, coming back into their own zone, never advancing the puck up the ice. And then we have, Boudreau sort of hesitating to call the goalie to the bench. Delia sort of skates back and forth a couple of times.
Has his
JT
arms in
Miller,
the air. Like, what do you want me to do?
yeah, like he's confused. You can't really blame him there. JT Miller carries it back into the zone, is like, what's going on? Why isn't our goalie leaving? I get it. Move the puck up the ice. You're good enough to carry the puck into the zone, right? Then put the sixth guy out there. But either way, they come back and say, we want the sixth guy now. And they waste 28 seconds. And then JT Miller gets mad at Delia, smacks a stick on the net saying, get to the bench. And then Delia eventually goes to the bench. And then the Jets score.
Okay, so I want to give you not even a take, just kind of my experience of the night, and then I'd love to hear your take because you play competitive hockey. I would never be either on the ice in the last minute, so I would just be one of the guys on the bench. Parker, I tweeted out a six. I gave it a couple hours. I think I had to do game over that night, and then I did a 6 tweet thread, and I wasn't actually judging anyone, Miller nor Delia. I just said potentially. With screenshots, there were 2 other chances that I thought Delia could have gone to the net, gone to the bench. And what I should have said in hindsight, Parker, I should have said he either could have gone to the bench or Boudreau should have called him over. But I stopped at, here are some instances where Delia could have gone to the bench. One of them was with 2 minutes left when Garland, I don't remember this, he actually gained the zone 1-on-5, went behind the net and centered it to Kuzmenko, and he almost got a good. So that was one chance potentially. I know it was 1-on-5, and then there's 20 seconds later where Kuzmenko kind of got stopped at the blue line, and then the Jets controlled it for 30 seconds. And then finally, you're right, Besser gets it at the 1:11 mark. But then for some reason, he skates towards the blue line and then cuts back. And that's when we see Boudreau actually wave Delia the first time. But then Delia sees Besser coming back. Then he skates back. Besser to Ekman Larson, back to Besser, then to Miller. And then we know what happens from there. So when you saw it and when you heard explanations, do you have a take or do you think it was no big deal? Is that just regular competitive hockey?
When I look at a goalie being pulled,
Yeah.
it's always the coach in my mind that does the pulling, right?
Right.
Because it's not the goalie's job to know when to be pulling. It's the coach's decision, right? The coach has a better vantage point of the play that they're trying to produce.
Yep.
The coach will wave them in. So when I see the goalie go and then come back, I think of the coach going like, hold up, and then like doing one of the like red light, green light when you were in elementary school. And it's just like, it's just kind of a mess. But I don't getting mad at the goalie over it. That doesn't make any sense. But yeah, if he is looking at them coming back and saying, I don't want to go, when the coach is telling him to still come, I don't know. I don't really care. As for when they should have pulled him, I get why with 2 minutes left you don't pull in a 1-goal game, especially a team that does have the firepower that this team does with scoring goals, and especially how easily they give the puck up. So I get a little bit nervous with the net empty because they seem to be kind of easy to score on. So I'm okay with it being like a 90-second play.
Okay.
As opposed to if you're down by 2, then I'm more of like the 3-minute play. But yeah, I think it was I just think it was such bad optics, right? I get why Miller's like, go to the bench, right? I have the puck behind our net. They're not taking it right now. Let's get the 6th guy out there. But I also don't think that he's the guy to yell at in that situation. I think it's probably the coach making the move. And that's what Boudreau said after, right? He's like, it's on me to pull the goalie.
He did.
And I don't think anyone's really in the right on it or in the wrong even on it. I just think it looks bad.
Yes, and I want to get into both what Boudreau and Miller said the next day. Another question about though, Parker, would you be okay, or maybe that's not the right? Do you think it'd been better, a little bit better, easier to swallow if Miller might have sworn, get off the ice, you get the F off the ice, but without the lumberjack?
Oh yeah, that was the optic part, right? If he's just yelling at him. Also, if JT Miller is like on a 9-game point streak with 15 points in his last 9 games, no one cares. right? Like it's like, hey, he's carrying the team right now, and he wants you to go to the bench, whatever, right? But since he's not playing good and he's due for a lot of money, and he already is sort of in the ire of the fan base, that's why it's such a big deal, right?
Yeah.
If it's Pedersen doing that right now, everyone's like, yeah, Petey, fire him up, let's go, right? Like it's a totally different argument.
Yes. I'm just, it's just so silly. And then I'm sure you saw the sarcastic tweet saying, well, if I was Delia, I wouldn't leave the net if Miller had the puck too.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, which
Oh, yeah.
not wrong.
So anything else you want to say about the game itself? And then we can talk about the aftermath.
No, the
Okay.
Canucks were bad.
So then Boudreaux speaks first, or at least that's the clip we see first the next day. And two things that were interesting to me, Parker. He took blame. He said, I was the one who waved him over. And then he didn't exactly say, I pushed him back, but he took ownership for waving Delia over as late as he did. So that's good. But he was also quick not to put any blame on JT Miller. And I get you're not going to call one of your own players out. That's the whole point I just made is Boudreaux took ownership or accountability. But I think some people found that a little bit strange that he almost gave Miller a free. Oh, he's a competitive guy and he's an emotional guy, and that's what they do. I don't know. What else? I guess what else could he say?
Yeah, it feels like he gets a free pass a lot though.
Yeah,
From the
I know. We'll talk about what he said today too.
yeah,
Later.
it's it just seems that other people get held accountable a little bit more.
Yeah.
Which is fair when you're putting up 99 points, but that's not what he's doing right now.
Yeah, right. Fair enough. And then Miller speaks, and I don't want to confuse these because he spoke today too. But on Friday, he said he basically dismissed Ryan Leslie of Sportsnet, saying, "This is the first I've heard of it. It's only a big deal because you guys make a big deal." He played the media card, and he said that there's no noise about it in the locker room. He said, short of apology, Parker, he's kind of said maybe I did something or said something I shouldn't have, but. And there's always a but with him. So I don't know if you thought his words were redeeming in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, again, when you're already sort of behind the eight ball in his scenario, right? Most people are gonna, no matter what he says, it's not gonna have the desired impact most of the time, especially when it's as antagonistic as his response was, right? When it's that's not your business, that's our business. And it's like, well, you're in the entertainment business, and it's a very devoted fan base, and the fans are the ones that make the league possible, and it's the media's job to cater to the fans, right? That's not their fault for asking the questions. But yeah, it was a weird, it's just always so weirdly antagonistic where you can't just be like, I probably shouldn't have done that. And then that's it, right? He just be like, heat of the moment. I got frustrated. My bad. That's all he has to say. That's all he has to say.
Beautiful.
And everyone's like, all right, fair enough. Move on. Right.
Yep.
But it's, oh, wow. You're going on and saying, that, it's not our business while you're not playing well. And then the comments he said today, which we'll get to, it just always looks so bad.
What is it with this guy?
Yeah, and he's due for a lot of money in the next 7 years. And I don't care about the money. I say that all the time. I don't care about the money he's getting paid. Good on him. I care about how it impacts the team because it's a salary cap league.
So we've talked about two of the three parties involved. Guess who we did not hear from, Parker?
I'm going to guess Colin Delia.
Yeah. And I would love, even if, he puts on his, I don't know if you saw that clip of the Connor Garland and the Canucks on the flight. He's the one in
has the glasses on, has his book.
I would just love to come up with a whole like Shakespearean response, kind of intellectual, philosophical, using words I don't understand. But yeah, I would actually, in all seriousness, I would love to hear from Delia. Maybe there was nothing to say. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. And goalies are harder to get quotes from. Right. I remember when I was in the locker room there, and Drance and Spencer Martin were talking a bit about how, like, they're not allowed to talk to each other basically, and it was kind of funny. But yeah, they try to shelter the goalies from the media, especially your third string goalie, right? You're not throwing this guy up in front of the podium, especially because he's playing good, right? He
Yeah.
stopped 35 of 38 shots that night. That's a great night for a goalie. So yeah, I can see why he's not, getting asked these questions.
Yeah, and even Kai says he's a third stringer. I doubt he's going to say anything bold. That's a great point.
Yeah,
By the
yeah,
way,
he's the boldest guy.
only Parker, because you mentioned the locker room that you were in. Where's your article, man? I want to read this thing.
Yeah, yeah, it was supposed
Just
to.
send it to me. No.
I could. It was, yeah. I don't know how much I'm supposed to. I don't know. I'm not
okay.
like, not allowed to say anything. But yeah, it was
Oh,
supposed to come out, and then
Okay.
a certain player who I wrote about is now in the AHL, so it has been delayed. However, he did score 2 goals tonight,
Yes. Yes.
so maybe he gets called up, and then
Yeah.
I can scrap my edits that I made, and we can just put it up. Because I thought I liked it, and I thought it was good, and I think it's now worse. So I would like him to get called up so we can go back to the original.
Okay. Obviously, I'm not trying to get you in trouble. I'm supporting you as my podcast partner.
Yeah.
I want to read this thing and I want to share it to the moon. So, okay. When it comes out, I'll be the first one on it. After you, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Okay. So then they have one more. So you predicted 1 and 2. I predicted 2 and 1. So we were both in the running because the Canucks were 1 and 1 heading into their final game last week.
Yeah. And guess how that one went?
I think you won the bet.
I think I did, because the Canucks allowed 3 straight goals in the second period. And I mean, I didn't watch this game. I was on the mountain, but I had Twitter on my phone, so I was just like, I would like do a run, and then while I was on the chair, I would check, and it was like, oh, no one's saying anything good. I'm probably not missing much. And then I tweeted that windmill picture where I said, a beautiful night to not watch a Canucks game.
It was beautiful.
So I'll let you take this one.
Sure. A big game. The last game of the calendar year, and they're either gonna be one game over 500, one game under 500, and first period was kind of even, and I think I'm just seeing if the shots play that out. Yeah, 13-9, so not too bad. But then the second period was tough, Parker, because the 2 Calgary goals were I wouldn't say carbon copies, but they're both 2-on-1s and really inexcusable. The first one was Ekman Larson pinched down the left. So JT Miller did the right thing and covered Ekman Larson's spot on the blue line. But then JT Miller pinched too. So then it left a 2-on-1 against Myers. And you know how those things work out. And then Lindholm used Toffoli actually as a decoy, and he snapped it past Martin. And I think the key to this one is after Miller made the bad decision to pinch, and we'll get to this as a whole, Hockey Night in Canada showed some pretty damning footage of him not even trying to back check. So that was goal number 1. And then just 8 minutes later, on a power play nonetheless, Miller didn't give the puck away. I think it was Petey actually, or someone did, but Miller kind of made a lazy line change, 2-on-1 going the other way. And I think it was Petey still hustling back. But then Coleman, Anderson does get across to Coleman. And now it's 2-0. And that was a backbreaker because you're shorthanded. And then Uyghur scores when our fourth line and I think it was probably Myers and Ekman Larson were out for like a minute and a half shift.
The
And
fourth line
3-0.
without Neil Zoman, mind
Yes. Oh, you said his name. Yes.
you. Yeah.
And then it's 3-0. Sheldon Dries is a really nice hand-eye goal to get, at least the Canucks some life going into the third. And then Petey scores with, 4 minutes in. So it's not like they didn't have time to, but Calgary, they're just overall the much hungrier, more aggressive team. I don't know because they're at home or they simply have more talent, but they seem to be the better team. But yeah, so that was kind of like the general. Martin was fine, 27 saves on 30 shots. Power play sucked again, 0 for 4. That's the one thing the Canucks kind of go as their power play goal. So those are some of the things that stood out to me for sure.
Did they pull the goalie in this one?
They did. And they kind of joked about it.
Well?
Yeah. When and how. Yes. But I think
it looks like, over 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
Based on Martin's time on ice.
Yeah, exactly. And the power plays we talk about it every show. It's maddening because when they're clicking, they're like 5th or 6th in the league. They have so much talent, but Calgary scouted them well, Parker. They were not letting them get set up. So anytime there was a scramble on the boards, rarely was the puck in open ice. It was always on the boards, and Calgary was winning all of those board battles. It's frustrating.
That's what power plays are, right? It's a possession game.
Yes.
Because you lose the puck, you lose 20 seconds, maybe 30 even.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's always a backbreaker.
By the way,
they're sitting at 25%, which is tied for 8th right now.
Okay, 8 still. I know we're not going to talk about this particular play, but did you see the Slovakian guy just kind of fall on the puck for about 30 seconds today?
I did. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why. Like they just blow the whistle.
And then he's kind of like shimmying around the ice track.
Yeah. Just getting stabbed effectively. Cause everyone's like, no, we want the puck. Like no one's benefiting here. Blow the whistle. But that was funny.
Wait, sorry. It was back to, so I think what we should talk about is, I don't know why I get so giggly when it comes to stuff like that. JT Miller, Hockey Night in Canada panel, they talked about him prior to the game because they dissected the whole Delia Miller thing. And they talked about him in the second period, intermission after he was on the ice or on the ice for the first one and then getting off the ice for the second goal. So he was a lightning rod, as he's continued to be throughout this weekend. He was a lightning rod for the Hockey Night in Canada panel.
Yeah, I wish we could just play the video and react to it, but we'd probably, CBC Sports would come after us.
Something would happen.
Yeah. Rogers doesn't like that very much. But yeah, it's if you have just a full 2 minutes of the four guys just sitting there talking only about you and not in very flattering thing with the big Happy New Year banner in front of them on the table, it's it's not ideal.
Yeah, it brings attention to him and not in a good way, although he did that himself just fine today. We'll talk about that. But before the game, though, Parker, it was almost Bieksa. I wouldn't say it was. He was kind of defending him, or at least saying, I get where Miller's coming from on the Delia thing. He worried more about Delia, being a third stringer, not worried, kind of excusing him, saying, well, maybe he was really looking for Boudreau's guidance there. And Miller, he's a competitive guy. So they kind of excused it. They actually kind of diffused it a little bit. But then after the two goals and during the second intermission, they basically called out his lack of effort. And they said, this guy's supposed to be a leader. What kind of example are you setting for your teammates?
Yeah, exactly. He is, he's the guy that just got the big contract. He's the guy who was the best player on the team last year, especially with, Pettersson having a bad first 35 games or so.
Yeah.
JT Miller was the reason that the Canucks were in the hunt last year. And then he goes out and gets paid and sort of has this heel arc, right? Where he is now, he's being antagonistic to the media and he's yelling at his teammates, and it's just he is supposed to be the leader or one of the leaders, right? And I fully agree, it's just bad optics, and we don't know what it's like in the room, right? I mean, like I said, I was in the room for a total of maybe 25 minutes across that day, and all I saw from Miller was his post-game availability where he was joking with Shen about the hits thing. And that was it, right? Like it's hard to know because they're on, the media's only in there for, 20 minutes after morning skate, usually 15 minutes after morning skate, and then 10 minutes after the game, right? They can be on their best behavior for 25 minutes and not, and then no one has any idea what goes on after that. So,
right.
Who knows what the internal team chemistry is like and team morale, but it's hard to imagine it's great with, everything that we see.
So, okay, let's stay on JT Miller. So we'll put 2022 to bed. The Canucks lose. They enter the new year one game under 500, whatever, 6 or 7 points out of the playoff spot, which their percentage gets lower and lower every time they lose, and smaller and smaller, I should say. And then we had a no practice yesterday for New Year's Day, and then a practice today. New lines, new old gear, so to speak. And then you had JT Miller speaking after practice.
Yeah, let's start with JT Miller and stay on that topic, and then we'll go to the gear.
Sounds good.
And the big quote from JT Miller today is, quote, "I'd like to say my lack of production is a compliment to me not cheating the game and playing the right way."
Oh, you said that with a straight face.
It hurt. Yeah, that's this tweet, which is just, it's Taj quoting it. This tweet has 1 million views because, the view counter's a thing. It has 1,200 likes and almost 500 quote tweets. Like this is hitting every corner of like NHL Twitter, right? Like I saw it in I saw it on the hockey subreddit. I saw like, JFresh and all these other people, that have hundreds of thousands of followers quote tweeting this like this is hilarious. Um
I'll add to that.
like
We have a group
quote,
chat with
I
our.
tried this at my last job. Like things like that.
Oh, that's what I was just gonna say. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I hear you. We have a group chat for the Game Over hosts across the country, and I wasn't the one who brought it up. I was just waiting to see someone, and sure enough, someone from Edmonton said, "Is this for real?"
Yeah. Yeah, like it's ridiculous. Like there's nothing to support that. There's literally nothing to support that. The advanced, the analytics don't support that. Your plus minus, you're minus 13 in 36 games. It doesn't support that. At 5-on-5, you've been getting shelled the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like it's just like he has to know that, right? Like he knows that he's not playing good.
And the fact,
I don't get it.
and the fact that he doubled down instead of saying, "Actually, I think my 5-on-5 play, or at least my play at center, I don't think it's been that bad." Even that's kind of lying, but that's neutral. But to double down and say it's actually been a compliment or it's actually been a positive. Oh,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it's like it's so easy again. It's so easy to just take accountability, right? And say, yeah, I've been struggling a bit, but I'm trying to improve my two-way game,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that's the reason that my production's been struggling, and I'm hoping to develop that and become a better player on the other side of it, or something like that. Again, they have a PR team. They're good. Yeah, I talked with a lot of them. They're good people. They seem pretty smart. Get this guy to stop saying things that have no basis in reality, because it's just, again, the optics are just, it's just a consistent, it's just consistent negativity.
And I guess Parker, is not as easy enough to say, well, don't put it in front of the media, because I think you explained to me that you guys, the media gets to request who they want to speak to, at least after a game. Is that correct?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they usually you get to request after morning skate, and you get to request after the game as well. And
Okay.
obviously the PR team could say, they could put different people up, right? They don't have to give you access to each player, right?
Right.
For example, the morning skate I was at when Besser was being scratched, obviously they said, we want to talk to Besser. And they said, we'll do our best. And obviously Besser was getting rinsed after practice, right? He was taking extra work, so they didn't put him out. So they could just put different people in front of the media. They could shelter somebody, but yeah, that's going to be pretty obvious pretty fast if that happens. And that's also going to be a bad look. It's more just like media training, like more so than anything else.
Oh, wow. Wow. So, yeah, and today it was Horvat, Miller, and Boudreau. Boudreau, as always, speaks that they posted clips on. And I think a reporter oh, by the way, as an aside, I have very strong feelings on some of the reporters in Vancouver. I'm not going to say anything now because I'll get in trouble. But it's funny when you see all three clips back to back where the same reporters ask the same three questions. And I get it. You're looking for a quote, really. It doesn't matter what you say. You're looking for a quote. But it's kind of funny to hear the same reporter ask the same three questions of the same three guys. But one of the unique questions was to Bo saying, hey, the guy beside you, your stallmate, JT Miller, is very emotional, blah, blah. And the way that Horvat had to speak about Miller, and maybe he believes this to be true, was he was defending him, saying, yes, he is an emotional player. Yes, he does say things. Yes, he does things, but it's all because he wants to win, kind of thing. So when other teammates are being forced to answer for you, I think that gets challenging too.
Yeah, and it's definitely, trying to get, someone's writing a piece on the JT Miller stuff and they wanted a Horvat quote for it. And Horvat is so good at talking, right? At speaking to the media. He's very easy, from all accounts, very easy to talk to, and will always seems to always give the right answer. And again, like if JT Miller spoke like Horvat does, sure, the play doesn't make up for it, but Horvat's had bad stretches of play, and he's gotten out of it fairly unscathed in comparison, right? There haven't been numerous articles written about him and the toxicity potentially that is around him, because he knows how to handle, you know, the negativity.
Right. Right. Okay, so we spent a few minutes talking about this JT Miller thing. Is there any way that the Canucks move him before his new contract even kicks in?
Well, I mean, the first thing you have to think of is, does he have positive value still
Mm-hmm.
to a team? I think he does.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, it's easy for us to look at and say no, right? Because I don't think he's worth that much money, $7 million a year, or $8 million a year over the next 7 years. Um, I think that ends up being a negative value contract for the Canucks. However, he also comes with the rest of this year.
Yeah.
And you got to think it just takes one team to really like JT Miller. And would they have been in a better spot if they traded him at the peak of his value at the last trade deadline or the offseason? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Who could have seen that coming?
Right.
Um, but for where they're at right now, yeah, if you can get rid of him, I think you just should. One, it makes the team worse this year, which, as we've seen from Connor Bedard, might be a good thing. And you get out of that big cap commitment, because we've
Yep.
seen what that cap commitment can do, right? We've seen Louis Eriksson. Do I think JT Miller will be as bad as Louis Eriksson was? Probably not. But no, like, people stopped hating on Louis after a while, because again, he knew that he wasn't playing well and he tried to adapt his game into a more of a defensive style. But that contract, absolutely killed the Canucks for 6 years.
6 years.
So if you can get out of that, I guess 5 years, and then they got traded. So it's still killing the Canucks because they traded it for the OEL contract.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And now
no.
OEL's here for another 5 more years. So technically it's 11 years.
So 11 years of downside from that contract, right?
Yeah.
The Tyler Myers contract, I don't give as much grief to, but it still was not good for the Canucks, right? And it's, again, these are all deals that we've seen coming, right? The hindsight hasn't been a big factor in the Eriksson deal. Okay, a bit of hindsight, right? Because Oliver Larson just fell off a cliff, Louis Eriksson.
Yeah.
But the OEL one, lots of people saw it coming, ourselves included.
Yeah.
The Tyler Myers one, I remember before that was signed, and while it was still a rumor, everyone was mad about it before it even got signed. So people see this stuff coming, and if you can get out of it now, I think you absolutely should.
Yes, there's a lot there. What is it with Swedish guys that are getting older? Anyway, so let's 2 more topics before we go to the people. Let's spend a few minutes on Lafreniere, and let's spend a few minutes on the World Juniors. Do you want to set up this Lafreniere story from today?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, a few days ago, Alexis Lafreniere, first overall pick back in 2020, a very highly touted first overall pick. Since he was 14 years old, you'd been hearing about Alexis Lafreniere, and he hasn't been great, right? We're talking about his rookie season, 21 points in that 56 game shortened season. Last year, 31 points in 79 games. This year so far, 17 and 37. So no upward trajectory for the most part. And he got scratched by the New York Rangers. And a lot of people are saying, wow, it kind of seems like New York Rangers, even though they've handled this quick rebuild so well, they're the guys that they draft and they develop don't work out, right?
Yeah.
You got Philip Hedl, who was highly touted. Capo Caco is the obvious example. Lafreniere here now. And you look back at all their drafts, and there's not a lot going on.
Right.
So people are saying, well, you got to just get rid of him because you're not doing him any favors. He's not helping you out right now. And you're trying to be a good hockey team at this point. I don't know, where are they at standings wise?
They're over 500. I think they're 3rd or 4th in their division. Are they?
They are pulling it up. They are 20, 12, and 6. So they're a good hockey team.
Yeah.
They're in the wild card spot right now.
Yeah.
A wild card spot 1. So they're a team that's trying to make the playoffs this year. And they might want to add some veteran players to make a playoff push. And Lafreniere seems to be a guy that they are somewhat souring on,
Yeah.
and doesn't seem to be contributing for the Rangers. Um,
Yeah.
then you have Rick Dollywall putting out a twit longer this morning, which is like, I feel like it's barely longer than 260 characters. It's a pretty,
And he repeats himself.
it is the shortest twit longer I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I'm
Should be
actually
called
going to,
Twit Medium, I think, for him.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay. It's 700 characters, but he does repeat himself quite, like it could have been a 3 tweet thread.
Yep. Yep.
But he says the Canucks know this player inside and out because Lafreniere's old agent is current assistant GM Emily Castonguay, which is why they were sort of connected to begin with. Also, Canucks have JT Miller, who's been linked back to the Rangers a bunch. So there's a lot of links between the Canucks and Rangers. Quote, the Canucks have checked in on Lafreniere. He was made a healthy scratch last week by the Rangers. The Rangers are very aware of Vancouver's interest. Lafreniere will not be cheap, but the Canucks have the assets like Bo Horvat. That's an example. That's nothing based on any info. If the Rangers decide to move him, Lafreniere is the type of player the new regime in Vancouver is looking for. And that tracks, right? We keep hearing the Canucks are interested in young roster players, right?
Yeah.
And apparently the Canucks were also one of the teams after Kirby Doc before he got traded to Montreal. I think he got traded for wasn't it like 9th overall or something like that? Like a pretty high draft pick that he got traded for. He was traded for the 13th overall pick in the draft this last year. So yeah, it kind of tracks. And now we have this connection from a citable source, Rick Dollywall. What are your thoughts on Lafreniere?
It's fascinating. 2 years ago in the bubble, it was the kid line. It was him, it was Hedel, it was Kako, the three guys you mentioned.
Right.
And Lafreniere's been the only one that's been scratched to my knowledge. Yeah, Kako and Hedel have been given, at least Kako for sure, giving top 6 opportunities. Lafreniere needs to be a top 6 player. So if the Rangers don't think that he's going to be a top 6 player, then it might make sense to move him. I think it's way too early. We used the Tage Thompson example 2 shows ago about how it took him his 5th season to really break out. Lafreniere's stats aren't amazing, but they're not brutal. They're at 0.4 points per game. So he's not bad. I read an article where because he's not on the first power play unit and the Rangers first unit stays out even longer than the Canucks. So there's no power play points to be had for anyone unless you're in the top 5. So maybe, just maybe, if we're going by points alone and production, there's a lot more that he can do. But I really think it's about opportunity. I don't think he's fallen out of favor. I don't think there's no animosity between him and head coach Gallant. I simply think there's players that are better than him that are playing higher in the lineup. So everything you said is true. What Rick Dollywell said about Castonguay and everything. I know you and I, before we pressed record, we were kind of speculating if you're looking at a Miller or Horvat or one of the two, do you have to send something that way to even it out from a sweetener, because Horvat's a rental versus Miller, who's a long-term contract, versus money coming back, retaining salary. So it's so much more complicated than we'd like to think, but it's kind of intriguing, isn't it? Horvat for Lafreniere, or better yet, Miller for Lafreniere, so you can re-sign Horvat.
Yeah, it is very interesting because there's always that first overall pedigree, right? Like that will always be a thing. And for good reason, right? Like, there's always players at the top of the draft. You almost always get a good player unless it's Nail Yakupov, right?
Yeah.
There's not a ton of exceptions, but at some point, he's in his 3rd NHL season. He is only 21 years old.
Yeah.
Right. Like he was born at the end of 2001. He's 21 years old for the rest of this season. His 22-year-old season is next year.
Yeah.
That's there's still some development ahead of him, right?
Yeah.
Like he put up stupid numbers in the queue. The Q's not the best league, but he was super highly touted. The year before he was drafted, he had 105 points. And then in his draft year, so 2019-20, at 112 points, right? So he knows how to produce. He has the skill set. He just hasn't made it work in the NHL.
Yeah. I'm going to challenge you, Parker, here. If I told you, unless you know this already, of all the 2020 draft class, in terms of points, it's not always the best barometer, but what would you say in terms of points? What place is he in out of all the guys?
I would probably guess like 4th, because a lot of them don't play right away.
Very good. Yeah, he's in 3rd. So Tim Stützle, who's awesome.
Yeah.
Lucas Raymond, who's good. And then,
Fantastic. Yeah.
Lafreniere's third. And then right behind him is Dawson Mercer.
Right.
Top three. Can't
Yeah.
complain.
By far the most games played. I guess him and Stutzler are pretty close, but Stutzler's way
Right.
more points. But
Yes.
yeah, I mean, it seems like the perfect buy low candidate, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the cheapest he'll ever be unless he gets worse. And it's risky, right? But, it's also risky to, sit there with JT Miller and re-sign Bo Horvat and be stuck with their contracts when you have to pay Elias Pettersson 2 years and all this other stuff. And yeah, it gets to the point where, if you're going to take a shot, it's a decent one to take. I don't know how much you're giving up, right? If it's, I've seen people say if it's Bo Horvat, then the Rangers have to add. I've seen people say,
Yeah.
it would be great if they did. But if you're the Canucks, you're getting rid of an expiring contract, right? For a guy who was, a first overall pick 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And maybe he doesn't turn out to be the player he was expected to be, but maybe he does. And that would be sweet. So yeah, it would be risky, but it's an interesting one to keep track of.
Yeah, great points, Parker. Not only have I seen in the chat too, people are in the chat are pretty smart. Not only are they talking about sweeteners or adding pieces, but they're also talking about salary retention. And for Horvat, that would just mean for 1 year, right? Because his contract ends. And for Miller, can you retain on just this year because his new contract doesn't kick in, kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So they could retain, let's say, the maximum, the half on this season.
Yep.
Or they could, I believe, only retain on the remainder if they want as well. I think it's pretty flexible. I think they could say, yeah, we're going to retain 15%, kind of like the OEL deal on Miller's contract or something like that.
But obviously you don't want to do that if you're the Canucks.
You don't want to, but it wouldn't be the end of the world, if it's like $1 million, $1.5 million.
Right.
But obviously not ideal, right? Every dollar counts. So I put a poll in the chat and I said, would you trade Bo for Lafreniere?
I'm going to vote here.
And it's, I don't like the YouTube polls because they like do chunks. Like we have 22 and then it'll probably like jump to like 35 or something. But feel free to vote in that poll.
Yeah.
But currently, yes is leading at about 65-35. And that's just Bo for Lafreniere. Now, if we're talking, if the Rangers are adding, and I feel like they couldn't be adding much, right? Like Lafreniere still is going to have a lot of interest, but Horvat is, one of the top trade pieces of this year. He's under contract until the end of this year. He's not going to get a big raise, right? He might get it's perfect bridge deal candidate. But yeah, 60% say yes, and that's with no sweeteners coming from the Rangers side. If you can get Lafreniere plus a little bit extra, what else are you going to get for Horvat, right? We're talking, are you going to get a first round pick and a prospect? Well, that first round pick is probably going to be in the 20 to 23 range, maybe 25. I mean, you'd be very happy if your 23rd overall pick turned into, a 35 point per game player at 21 years old.
Right. It's funny. I'm just looking at these results as they continue to track. Imagine if it was, would you trade JT for Lafreniere? Do you think we're at 90-10?
Oh, absolutely.
Territory?
Yeah, that's a gimme. Because that's just all positive. Yeah, Rod even asked, Miller for Laff, would you? Absolutely. Yeah. I think the Canucks are it's highway robbery in that case.
Yeah.
I'll call the poll there and see where the numbers ended up, but it looked like 63-37. So yeah, I mean, but I don't know if the Rangers do that.
Yeah.
But most people seem to think that would be a fine deal for them too. So I'm not entirely sure.
I also love on YouTube, because I use the polls a lot too. They always round down. So you always are missing 1% somewhere, but that's okay.
Yeah. 63-36. If anything, you'd expect it to go too high if they're like both 0.5 and they both round up, but nope.
Right. Yeah. They just knock off the decimal.
Yeah.
Wow. So, okay, let's do a couple minutes on World Juniors and then we'll get to the people. So you like this Connor Bedard guy, I think.
Yeah, he's a pretty okay hockey player. He loves having the puck. He loves it. He's always calling for the puck. He's always beaver tapping.
Yeah.
He is just, you can tell he just loves to score. and he loves
Yeah.
to close his eyes when he shoots, which is the funniest thing. I think it was the Wyatt Arndt who tweeted out like they're gonna realize Bedard needs glasses and he's gonna score 100 goals in the NHL a year, because he does. He closes his eyes every time he releases. I guess it makes it hard for the goalie to track, but yeah, he is absolutely just shredding the World Juniors,
The
and it's
way, oh, the
ridiculous.
way he gets a shot off Park, it's nuts. It's nuts. And that goalie, that goalie is good because he was making some of those saves look not super easy, but relatively easy. But those are hard shots to save, like Bernard's shots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they are tough. I mean, he's got 21 points in 5 games, right? Like in 15 periods of hockey, he has 25. He's averaging 4 points a game, 8 goals, 13 assists. Um, yeah, he's absolutely unreal. And I would give up a lot. Now I saw someone on Twitter be like, "Would you trade Pedersen and Hughes for Connor Bedard?" Where would you fall on that as a hypothetical?
I saw that and I actually voted no. And when I voted, it was like close 53 no,
Yeah,
47 yes.
I
Yeah.
voted. I saw it, and I instinctively I'm like, no. And then I look, I'm like 52-48. What am I missing? And then I'm thinking
Yeah.
about it. I'm like, okay, well, Bedard might be a game breaker, right? Like he might be a 100 point a year guy, right?
Right.
A 50 goal scorer.
Yeah.
But Patterson and Hughes are fantastic pieces. So again,
No,
I,
they
I
are.
I still don't make that move, because I think he signs here eventually.
I love that. And I know it's not a perfect simulation because obviously Bedard, you only have to pay him at least from a cap hit 900 grand, 950 a grand. You
Yeah,
can performance bonus him out, to the moon. But yes, then you look at cap hit versus production versus. But then I said no because I simply thought of this. Sure, Bedard is probably going to peak better than PD. But then if you take Hughes off this team, where's our defense?
yeah. The Canucks have already committed so much up front.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I mean, this is a guy he's selling out WHL ranks, right? Like I
Yep.
literally looked because he was playing in Langley like a month
Yes.
ago against
Yep.
the Giants, and I was like, I wonder what tickets are like for this game. So I pull it up, and oh, they're all sold out. Okay,
Unreal.
I guess that's it, right? It's like a 5,000 seat stadium in Langley,
Yeah.
that people are flocking to see this guy play, and he's putting up. He's got a goal a game in the WHL. He's got more than a goal a game at the World Juniors. He's absurd.
Unreal. Lucas, I think we got so excited talking about Bedard. Forgot to mention this one. Another $5 donation. Thank you, Lucas. Here's a take for Miller for Laffy. 25% on Miller, prospect, and a second or third rounder for Laffy and salary throw-ins.
Who's the prospect though? That's I mean, no,
Yeah.
the Canucks have many, right?
Right.
Like, are we talking like a Will Lockwood? Are we talking someone more recent, like a Lakari Mackey, who hasn't looked great at the
Mm-hmm.
World Juniors, although they did pull out an unlikely win today.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't even know who else did the Canucks draft. Elias Patterson, number 2. Uh,
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly who you're making that move on, but
Yeah.
um, definitely possible, right? Like,
Yep.
and we've seen that continued interest from the Rangers around JT Miller, and I'd be fine with that being a route that they went, especially if we're talking like a second round pick. Fine, get rid of that for Lafreniere and Miller, and yeah, probably most prospects that they have, I'd be fine with as well because you're also dumping that JT Miller contract, which I think is a net positive. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'd be fine with something like that.
Man, just before we get to the people, when you say net positive, are we going to be talking about this JT Miller contract for the next 7 years, Parker?
Buckle up. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, they very well could be. Just you have to really hope that that he either turns out to be fantastic again, or they can get that one out.
Jarhead I met through roller hockey. My coworker's son played against Bedard, mentioned his name to me a while back as someone to look out for. I was like, yeah, whatever, cool.
Yeah, I've heard definitely stories like that where you're like, yeah, there's always the one kid, there's always the one kid in every minor hockey association that everyone's like, watch this guy. I remember the one from mine, and he definitely ended up being like someone decent, but
Oh.
I don't know if he made anything. I don't remember his name though, so I can't. It's tough for me to look up. Um,
Yeah, that's fine. But he made it somewhere?
I think he was like a late draft pick
Okay, that's cool.
or an undrafted free agent, something like that.
By the way, in Disneyland in a Space Mountain lineup, I met a guy who played in Sweden. His name was Carlson, Magnus Carlson, and he
Oh, the
made it.
chess player,
Oh, is that true? There's a
best
lot of.
chess player in the world.
I tried to look him up. There are a lot of Magnus Carlsons, put it that way. And then he made it all the way to a preseason game with the LA Kings, which is kind of cool. Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
that's not bad. Yeah, no,
Yeah, not
Magnus
bad.
Carlson is the best chess player of all time.
Okay,
So
I will look him up. Thank you. Thank you. Maybe it was him.
maybe. All right, we got a few minutes left.
Sure.
And then you got to get to your show. So let's
Yeah,
get a couple
eventually, whatever.
from the people. Anything that you've seen? Because I have not.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot going on tonight, which is good, which is really good. Let's see.
I'm gonna scroll up.
Me too. I'm scrolling all over the place too.
Jordan with a decent point here saying it would be a fair trade, but the Rangers don't need another center. They have Zibanejad, Trocheck, and Hedel. Yeah,
Play Miller on the wing.
yeah.
Oh, you're talking about Horvat. Sorry, you're talking about Horvat.
Yeah, if we're talking about Horvat, yeah. If it's Miller, then yeah, put him on the wing. And if it's Horvat, put Trocheck on the wing, right? Or put Horvat on the wing, but have Horvat take the faceoffs. I don't think any team has a problem with having too many centers. You look at Team Canada when they go to the Olympics and they just bring 12 centers, and that's all they do, right? So I still don't think that's much of a limiting factor.
Yeah.
Because at that point you just never need to play your fourth line, right? Like
that's true.
You don't need to put Hedel on the ice. Not that I don't know if he's been fine this year. He got 17 points already. That's he's +8. But
isn't that the same as Lafreniere? That you just looked up Hedel, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but again, adding a good player is adding a good player.
I like this one from True Sight. Spied on the Rangers subreddit, and they do not like Horvat for Laff.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone overvalues their own prospects, and we are so guilty of that as well.
Oh, yeah.
That for people looking from the outside, you get a bit of a different perspective. But we also don't watch Lafreniere play hockey, right? We see him twice a year. So we're going on, sort of third string information as well, secondary sources, so to speak, that it's, we're just guessing at this point and saying, if this was the case, would we be happy with it? I don't care what Rangers fans think, if they're upset about it, then I want it to happen more because that means it's better for us. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting tidbit though.
Fangirl says, who would you take out of the lineup if we got Laffy? Well, a lot of things have to happen, but if he's a left winger, he's a left winger by trade. So you could put him anywhere in the lineup, quite frankly.
And you wouldn't have to take anyone out because you probably traded a player away, right?
Yeah,
so
that's a good way of putting it.
You got the roster spots already. The real question is, who are they taking out to put him on back in? Because he deserves to be there.
I think there's a couple things riding on that, but yes, I agree. Interesting from Peter. Why do you think ownership won't commit to rebuild? The retooling doesn't work. Why not try something new and go in a different direction with a rebuild?
Impatience.
Ownership.
Yeah. I think it's just, I think it's because rebuilds are risky. They don't always work. Yeah. Right. Like rebuilds miss sometimes. The problem is they're kind of also the only way to succeed, right? If you don't rebuild, you end up stuck in the middle. And that's where the Canucks have been for so long now. But if you rebuild, you're going to suck for a few years. And if you don't draft well and you don't make good moves, you'll suck for a long time. And then you become irrelevant. Think of like Columbus, right?
Yep.
Like just teams that you just sort of forget that they exist, right? Buffalo, Buffalo
Yes.
got Eichel, they got Darlene, they did
You
all
and
these good
Jas
things,
you and Jasker are on the same wavelength there.
and
Very good.
now they're good after they got rid of Eichel, and because Tage Thompson has turned into an absolute monster. Um, right? You look at Toronto, who has built a top 5 team in the NHL, and they can't win a playoff round,
Mhm.
right? But then you look at other teams that rebuilt, and you look at Pittsburgh, and they won a couple of cups. You look at Chicago, they won a couple of cups. Look at Tampa Bay, they won a couple of cups, right? So it's a swing for the fences type thing, a rebuild, right? Where you're saying we're going to be bad, and we might be bad for a long time, but we might also end up being really good. And we always say the ultimate goal is to win the Stanley Cup. It's not to be the ninth best team in the league, right? It's to win
Yep.
the whole thing. And if that's the strategy you have to take to get there, which it kind of is, right?
Yeah.
Then yeah, do it.
And look at the Oilers, as Jeff mentioned. Even the Oilers look iffy. And how many years have they had technically both number one picks and or supposed rebuilds? It's
Yeah, and again, it's not that the rebuild was a bad decision, right? They got
yeah,
McDavid and Draisaitl. That's great and a great place to build off. The problem is they didn't build off of it. They
yeah,
never had defensemen,
yeah,
right? They just have had such bad defense forever.
and
They've
bad
had
goalies.
yeah, I was gonna say just mediocre goaltending as well. That even though you have these phenomenal forwards up front that can carry a game and win you a game, 7-2 if they need to, you also have no backbone to support it. That's why so many teams like to build from the net out, which the
Mm.
Canucks sort of skip the defensive step of that. Um, but yeah, it's risky, but I mean, is it riskier than not doing that and just being the 15 to 20th best team in the NHL year in, year out? Because that's all we're
Yeah.
getting.
Exactly. And Thomas, I'm sure you saw it too. Thomas Drance wrote an article about all 32, I mean, where the Canucks fall into all 32 teams for not a season, but January 1 to December 31st, number 19 in the league. Probably like the worst spot to be in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no like, here's where we go from here, right?
Yeah.
You're getting the 14th pick in the draft,
Yep.
and you're not making the playoffs, and you're overpaying people to stay because you're a middling team, and yada yada yada.
Yep.
And that's life.
Edmund made a good point. Devils are one rebuild that has worked.
Yeah, and that
Or
was
seems like it.
surprising because they weren't supposed to be that good this year, and they're sort of just
Crazy.
sort of winging it and have been great.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, it worked. Like, the Rangers are the prime example for me, right? They, like, 3 years after the Canucks started rebuilding, they said, "Hey, we're gonna rebuild, and it's gonna suck for a while." And they said that. They put out a letter to their fans, and then a couple years later, they were in the playoffs against Carolina, and they got run out of the building. But like, they were back in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they're still in a playoff spot to this day. That
Yeah.
it's they committed.
Mhm.
And you look at all the teams that are doing well, they all committed to rebuilds at some point. Either that or they rebuilt 20 years ago and they're still hanging on, like
Right.
Boston and Pittsburgh, right?
So if it's impatience, which I agree with, if it's a bit of probably ownership, which I think we'd all agree with, yeah. And going back to the impatience, Rutherford is not a young man. I don't think he took this job thinking he's going to be around for a 5 to 6 year rebuild.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that way for sure.
Yeah. And again, that's another sort of short-sighted thing, right? Is
Yeah.
grabbing a president of hockey operations that's 78 years old that, he probably doesn't want a 5-year, rebuilding plan. He might be a good person to helmet, but that's probably not what he wants to do. And, we sort of end up in the same place that we've been for a while.
Sad but true.
All right. And with that, we should wrap it up, folks. This is one of our most well-attended Canucks After Darks in a while. 160 of you in here. If you haven't yet, hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't. It's good to have you all here. If you missed any part of the show, feel free to rewind back to the beginning, save it to your watch later playlist, anything like that. Or it will be up on your favorite podcast platform in about 15, 20 minutes. So you can go on Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, not Apple Music, and type in Canucks After Dark. It'll be the first one that shows up. And if you want more content after this, Clay is doing his live show on his channel that you can find linked in the description. Clay, any parting words?
It would be cool if we were if we were on Apple Music for sure. Yeah, there are 150 you in here or 160, only 35 likes. Let's jack that up. This is maybe it was all of your resolution to come and attend Canucks After Dark, which we appreciate. And Lucas, thank you for the donations and thanks to everyone for supporting us. Yeah, if you're not sick of hockey talk, I'll be coming on around 15 minutes on my own channel. And aside from that, Parker, we got to quickly give our predictions for this week. We got 3 games. We got 3 games to talk about.
I don't know who they're playing, but I'll just predict losses and I might be right.
You got Islanders at home on Tuesday, Avalanche at home on Thursday, and then in Winnipeg on Sunday.
That is an easy 1 and 2. To beat the Islanders, they'll lose to Colorado and Winnipeg.
I'm going 1-1-1.
You're hoping for the win. I saw you're doing another watch party.
Yeah, I hope you can come. When you come,
I will not be there. I'm going to the Seahawks game on Sunday.
Okay, that's very that's a good reason. Not even an excuse. That's a good reason. You'll be there in spirit. Though.
Get really expensive, then I'll sell them and I'll show up.
Okay, do what you got to do. Yes. So let's say, they'll beat the Islanders, they'll lose to Colorado, and they'll tease everyone at the watch party on Sunday and lose in extra time. How's that?
Beautiful. Love it. All right, folks. Thank you very much for hanging out with us tonight. I hope you all had a good New Year, and we will talk to you in the next one.